I don't remember what she wore that day, only the way the air felt when she looked at me. Like something had shifted quietly, something that shouldn't have. Her name was Elena. She was my mother's friend. Or at least, that's how I used to think of her, the calm, poised woman who always seemed a little out of reach, like a photograph from another time. She carried herself with an ease that made other people soften their voices when she spoke. The day I saw her again, I was helping move some old paintings for a small gallery project. She'd been restoring art for years, her hands used to creating, repairing, making beauty look whole again. When I walked in, she was standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, her hair half pinned, sunlight breaking across the streaks of silver near her temples. She didn't hear me at first. She was humming, faintly, absently, as she leaned over a canvas, tracing something invisible with the tip of her brush. "Still talking to your paintings?" I said. She turned, startled for half a second before her eyes softened. "Only the ones that listen." That was Elena, humor with a trace of melancholy. Every word seemed to come wrapped in some deeper meaning, something she didn't want to say directly. The room smelled faintly of turpentine and rain. There were no sounds except the slow ticking of a wall clock and the brush tapping against glass water. "You grew up," she said, half smiling. "You stopped calling me by my name," I replied. Her eyes flicked toward me, surprised then amused. "You still notice too much." That made me smile, but I looked away before she could see. Hours passed that way, quiet, unhurried. She worked. I tried to help, though I kept finding excuses to stay longer than I should have. Every movement she made had precision, the way she reached for a cloth, how she wiped her hands, how she paused before answering a question. At one point, she leaned close to inspect the brush I held, her fingers brushing mine. The touch was light, accidental, yet it stayed, like heat that refused to fade. "You hold it wrong," she murmured. Her voice was low, close enough that I could feel it against my cheek. "I thought I was doing fine." "You were, until you started thinking about it." Her breath caught, a small, almost imperceptible sound. Then she stepped back, breaking whatever had just passed between us. We didn't talk much after that. The quiet filled up the space again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. It felt aware, like the walls were listening. When she finally looked up, it was already dusk. The rain had grown heavier, the world outside muted and gray. "You should go," she said softly, "before it gets worse." I nodded, though I didn't move. She walked me to the door, holding it open with one hand. Her other hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, that same careful, practiced grace, but for the first time, it faltered. Her fingers trembled just slightly. "Thank you for the help," she said. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I answered. The words hung there, bare, simple, too honest. Her eyes lifted, met mine, and for a moment I thought she might say something, but she didn't. She just looked. And that look was enough to make my pulse stumble. Then a sound broke the stillness, her phone ringing somewhere in the other room. She turned toward it, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. "Good night," she whispered finally. And before I could answer, the door closed, leaving me outside in the rain, her scent still caught in the air between us. To be continued, I told myself I wasn't going back. But by the end of the week, I was standing at her door again, pretending I'd come to return a forgotten rag, pretending I didn't already know she'd kept it on purpose. Elena opened the door slower this time, her expression soft but careful, like she'd already rehearsed what not to say. "I was wondering when you'd remember," she said, taking the rag from my hand. "I didn't forget," I admitted. Her gaze lingered uncertain, then she stepped aside to let me in. The house looked different in the evening. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried that damp quiet, as if the whole world had gone still. She poured tea, for me, not herself, then sat across the table, arms folded. "You shouldn't keep visiting like this," she said after a while. "I know. And yet? And yet." She sighed, shaking her head, but there was no real conviction in it. You're too young to be this stubborn. Too young for you? That earned me a faint smile. For what you think this is? She told me about her past later, not directly, but in fragments. A marriage that had slowly withered, a son who lived abroad and rarely called. People get used to loneliness, she said quietly, tracing the rim of her cup. It's strange how silence can start to feel like company. There was something in her tone that made me want to reach across the table. I didn't, but my fingers twitched against the wood. She noticed. Don't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like you're trying to understand me. I almost laughed, but stopped when I saw her expression, not cold, but frightened. Later, as she showed me a painting she'd finished, a portrait of a faceless woman with her head slightly turned, she stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder through her thin sweater. I pointed to the canvas. Who is she? No one, she said. Then softer. Everyone. Her hair brushed my cheek when she leaned closer to adjust the light. I could smell the faint trace of cedar oil in it. My chest tightened, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. She turned, too quickly, and almost collided into me. Her hands caught the edge of my sleeve to steady herself. We froze. Her fingers didn't move. Mine didn't either. The sound of the clock filled the silence, slow and heavy. She was the first to look away, pulling her hand back with a trembling exhale. This isn't right, she said. I know. Then why? Because I don't want to leave. That made her eyes close briefly, as if the words had weight she couldn't hold. When she opened them again, something had changed, not softer, not harder, just real. As I left that night, she walked me to the door. Her hand brushed my arm, a light, fleeting touch that should have meant nothing. But she didn't pull away immediately this time. And neither did I. To be continued. The next time I saw Elena, it wasn't planned. She was at the cafe near the library, the same one I always stopped by after class. Her hair was tied loosely, a strand falling across her cheek as she read. For a minute I just stood there, watching her through the window, pretending she wasn't the reason my heart started racing. When I finally walked in, she looked up, startled first, then wary, then something softer. You shouldn't, she whispered as I sat down across from her. I wasn't going to stay, I said, even though I already had. The silence between us was thick enough to taste. She stirred her coffee twice, though she'd already added sugar. I watched the spoon tremble against the cup, the small tremor in her hand betraying more than she wanted to show. You're following me now? She said, trying for humor. Just bad timing. Or bad judgment. Her voice was steady, but her foot brushed mine under the table, accidental, then not. Neither of us moved. I leaned forward slightly. You keep saying I shouldn't. But you never tell me to stop. That's not fair. Neither is this. Her eyes met mine for a moment too long. It was the kind of look that pulls something raw to the surface, the kind that asks and denies in the same breath. The bell above the cafe door chimed, a familiar voice called her name. Elena's friend, Marla, walked in, waving cheerfully before she noticed me sitting there. I saw the flicker of confusion cross her face, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Elena's posture changed instantly, hands folded, chin lifted, a polite smile forced into place. Marla, she said lightly. This is a friend from the community center. I nodded, heart pounding, pretending not to notice the strain in her voice. Marla chatted for a minute, oblivious. But every second stretched. Elena's fingers gripped her napkin tighter until it tore. When Marla finally left, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt scorched. I told you, she murmured once the door closed. This isn't just about us. People talk. People assume. Let them, I said. You don't understand what it's like for me. Then explain it. She didn't. Instead, she reached for her coat, fingers brushing mine as she did. Outside, the wind had picked up, cold and biting. She walked beside me, close enough that our arms almost touched. I shouldn't care what they think, she said, half to herself. Do you? Yes. A pause. And no. We stopped under the awning of her building. Rain started again, light at first, then steady. I turned to say something. I don't even know what, but she looked up just then, and whatever words I had died in my throat. We were too close. Her breath brushed against my chin. Her hand rose, hesitated, then fell. Elena, I whispered. She closed her eyes for half a second, her lips parting just enough for the thought of a kiss to exist. Then the sharp buzz of her phone shattered the moment. A message. A name flashing on the screen. She stepped back as if burned, clutching her bag. I have to go. But when she looked at me one last time before turning away, that look said she already knew she wouldn't stay away for long. To be continued, *** title. She said this isn't love, but every breath we took said otherwise. Part 4, nearing the climax, it happened on a night that should have meant nothing, a rainstorm, a broken umbrella, and an excuse that neither of us really believed. Elena had called, asking if I could help carry some boxes from her car. Her voice was calm, almost casual. But something in it, a pause too long, a breath too soft, made me go. By the time I got there, the rain was relentless. She stood at her doorway, hair damp, sweater clinging to her arms. You're soaked, she said. So are you. A small laugh escaped her, the kind that sounded like surrender. Inside, her apartment felt smaller than before. Warmer, quieter. The lamps cast everything in a honeyed haze. We worked in silence at first, stacking books, moving old memories. But every time our hands brushed, the air shifted. At one point I reached for a box just as she did. My hand closed over hers. Neither of us moved. She looked up, eyes uncertain, pupils wide. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. How else am I supposed to? Her breath caught. She turned away, pretending to rearrange something on the table. You're too young to know what this means, she said finally. I'm old enough to know what I feel. She froze. The rain hit harder against the window, like the world outside was listening in. Don't, she said softly. Don't make this harder. I'm not trying to. I stopped. Because she had turned back to face me, eyes bright, chest rising and falling with something she couldn't hold in anymore. I can't keep pretending this isn't happening, she said, barely above a whisper. I see you and I. Her voice broke. She pressed her fingers to her temple, shaking her head. I've already made enough mistakes. Maybe this one's worth it. She let out a trembling breath, half a laugh, half a sob. Don't say things like that. Then stop giving me reasons to. The next silence was unbearable. She stepped closer, maybe to tell me to leave, maybe not. I could smell her perfume, faint and worn. Her hand brushed against my shirt as she reached to move past me, but I caught it, gently, without thought. Tell me to go, I said. She didn't. Her pulse fluttered beneath my thumb. I lifted a hand, brushing the wet strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't pull away, not this time. Why do you keep looking at me like that? She murmured. Because I don't know how not to. She leaned forward just enough that I felt her breath on my jaw, warm, trembling. My heart stuttered. Elena. Her eyes closed, and for a moment we were inches away, no words, just the hum of rain and two people running out of reasons not to. Then, a sharp knock at the door. She jerked back, hand over her mouth. Either of us spoke. Either of us breathed. But in that heartbeat of silence before she turned toward the sound, everything that had been hidden between us finally stopped pretending to be anything else. To be continued, the knock still echoed in the room long after it stopped. Neither of us moved. Elena's hand trembled on the edge of the table. The rain outside sounded like static between heartbeats. Then a familiar voice called through the door, warm, oblivious. Hey, you home? Your car lights are still on. It was Daniel. Her neighbor. The same man who always waved when I left. Her friend. Maybe more once. Elena's eyes widened, panic, guilt, something deeper. She gestured for me to stay quiet, her breath quick and shallow. "Just a second!" she called, voice too bright. She slipped past me, the brush of her arm electric, her scent dizzying in the small space. I stood frozen, close enough to hear her steadying her tone before opening the door. Daniel's voice carried faintly into the hallway. "You all right? Saw someone through the window." "Thought just me," she interrupted. "I was unpacking boxes." I saw his shadow shift closer. "You sure?" Thought I heard another voice. My chest tightened. The air inside the apartment turned heavy, thick with everything we weren't saying. Elena's answer came slower this time. "You must have heard the TV." He hesitated, then laughed, easy, trusting. "Guess I'm hearing things again." When the door finally shut, she leaned against it, eyes closed, shoulders trembling. "You should go," she whispered. "I didn't mean for, no, it's not your fault." Her hands covered her face, then dropped, fingers curling against her chest. "He's kind. He helped me when I first moved here. People already talk enough." I took a step closer, but she turned away. "Don't," she said quietly. "If you touch me right now, I won't have the strength to stop." That should have been enough to make me leave. But it wasn't. "You lied," I said softly. She looked up, startled. "When he asked? You said it was just you." Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched until it hurt. "I had to," she said finally. "Because this," she gestured between us, "isn't supposed to exist." "Then why does it feel real?" She shook her head, tears glinting faintly in the lamplight. "Because real doesn't always mean right." The storm outside cracked again, lightning flashing white against her window. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, as if something inside her broke, she stepped forward. "I can't keep pretending," she said. "Not when I think about you, even when you're not here." Her confession landed between us, raw and trembling. I reached out, slowly, until my fingers brushed her wrist. She didn't pull away. Her breath hitched, and she whispered, almost pleading, "If anyone finds out, I don't care," I said. Her eyes searched mine, torn between fear and something fiercer. "You will," she whispered. And yet, even as she said it, she leaned closer. Not enough to cross the line completely, but close enough that I could feel her shaking, from wanting, from resisting. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment like glass. "You should go," she said again, but this time her voice was trembling for a different reason. I didn't answer. I just nodded once, slowly. And as I left, her reflection lingered in the rain-soaked window, her hand pressed against the glass, as if to hold something she just decided to let go. *** title. She said this isn't love, but every breath we took said otherwise. Part 6, the climax. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. A week had passed, long enough for me to think she'd ended it silently, that maybe the moment by her window had been the last time we breathed the same air. But there she was, standing by the park bench where we first met, the wind lifting strands of her hair, her eyes already finding mine before I could decide whether to turn back. She didn't smile. Neither did I. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Maybe for the same reason you are." She looked down at her hands. "I told myself I wouldn't come. And yet." Her laugh was small and broken. "You and that word." We walked in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't feel empty, just heavy. Leaves brushed the path, and the city hummed faintly around us, like a world too big for what was happening between two people too unsure of everything. Finally, she stopped near the fountain, where the water caught the fading light. "This has to stop," she said, "before it becomes something we can't undo." "It already is." Her lips parted, a soft sound escaping, not quite a breath, not quite a protest. "Don't," she said. "You don't understand what you're risking." "Then make me understand." Her eyes lifted to mine, tired, guarded, wanting. "I'm not who you think I am," she said. I've spent half my life pretending to be someone that people wouldn't leave. I stepped closer. I'm not leaving. Her pulse flickered at her throat. I could see it, the tremor beneath her skin, the effort it took to stay still. Why do you keep doing this to me? She whispered. Because I can't stop. The distance between us vanished, not all at once, but in tiny collapses. Her hand brushed my chest, just enough to feel my heartbeat. My fingers found the edge of her sleeve, tracing it like a map I was afraid to finish reading. She closed her eyes. If I let this happen, it changes everything. It already has. Her breath trembled against my jaw. The world narrowed to warmth and rain in the air, to the soft sound of her inhale, to the question that hung unspoken between us. Then she leaned in, not a kiss, not yet, just her forehead resting against mine. I can't promise it won't hurt, she murmured. I'm not asking for safe, I said. Her hand came up, fingers brushing my face, slow, uncertain, reverent. The kind of touch that asks and answers at once. For a heartbeat, we stopped pretending. When she finally stepped back, her voice was quiet but steady. Then this is our choice. Her eyes met mine, raw, real, final. And though no kiss followed, no words could change what passed between us in that silence. We both knew what we'd chosen, and what it would cost. She turned first, walking away through the soft rain. And I stayed, still feeling her warmth in the space she'd left, still hearing her last words in the hush that followed. This isn't love, she'd said. But every breath we took said otherwise. To be concluded, the park bench stayed empty, her window light stayed off, and every evening that passed made what we'd shared feel more like something imagined, too fragile to have been real. But she'd left her scarf behind in my car. I found it days later, caught between the seats, faintly carrying her scent, cedar, paint, rain. It was enough to make me drive back, even without a reason. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, but not angry. Just tired in the way people look when they've been trying too hard to forget something they can't. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. Neither should you, I replied. Her lips curved, almost smiling. You always were terrible at staying away. So were you. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was tender, familiar, the kind that belongs to people who've already said everything that matters. I held out the scarf. You left this. Her fingers brushed mine as she took it. I was wondering where it went. I think it wanted to stay with me. She laughed, quiet, real. You make it hard to do the right thing, you know that? I never asked you to do the right thing, I said. No, she admitted, eyes softening. You just made me feel something I thought I'd forgotten how to. For a moment, we just stood there, close, but not touching. The air between us still hummed, but it wasn't tense anymore. It was warm. She stepped forward first. Not out of impulse, but choice. Her hands found mine, fingers intertwining slowly, deliberately. I was afraid, she said. Of what people would say. Of what I'd lose. But mostly, of how much I wanted you. I swallowed hard, not trusting myself to speak. You don't scare me, I whispered finally. Not anymore. Her thumb brushed the back of my hand. And what now? I smiled faintly. We stop pretending we don't already know. She moved closer, close enough that I could feel her breath against my chin. Her eyes searched mine, waiting for something unspoken, something that didn't need to be said anymore. When she leaned in, she didn't kiss me, not right away. She rested her forehead against mine, the same way she had that night in the park. Only this time, she didn't pull away. This isn't love, she murmured again, almost teasing. I smiled. Then let's stop calling it that. Her lips brushed mine then, soft, certain, real. Later, we sat by the window, watching the rain begin again. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder. My hand traced slow circles on her palm. Either of us spoke. We didn't need to. Whatever this was, wrong, right, imperfect, it finally felt ours.